Today I'm going to show you how to sew a hanging 12 days of Christmas advent calendar. Each one of these little boxes on my hanging advent calendar are little pockets that you can put treats or whatever you like in them. The pattern pieces are below in the description box. You can print them at home, or if you're watching from our website alohasewingcompany.com, welcome and sew along. Let's start by making the star for the advent calendar. It will go here. Get both of your star fabrics and put the pretty sides of the fabric together, and then you're going to pin or clip all the way around your star and sew using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, but leaving a small gap opening on one of your straight edges so that you can turn this right side out. Here's mine all sewn. You can see I left a little gap opening right here on the side, and now I'm going to go and clip all of the corners of my star right up to the stitch length, but not cutting through my stitches, so that when we flip this right side out, it reduces the bulk right there at the corners so that the corners are nice and crisp. You're also going to make small slits right up to those corner stitch lines on each of your star sides. This is so that the fabric turns and the seams lay nice and flat without puckering here in a minute. Now go to that opening that you left on one of your sides and flip this star right side out carefully. I also like to use a chopstick and put it through my whole opening so that I can smoothen out all of my seams and poke out all the corners of my stars. Make sure you don't press too hard right at those corners because that chopstick can go right through your seams. Now let's go ahead and iron this flat, and then we're going to close that opening that we left open right here by folding the fabric inwards so that it's flush with the rest of the fabric on the outside, about 1/4 of an inch. Once you do that, you can press it with your iron to hold it in place or clip it if you want to. And then you're going to top stitch using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around your star. Here is mine top stitched. You can see I stayed right close to the edge of that star using about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now let's make the stump of the tree. Your stump is going to hold 2 different pockets, but we're just going to make one big pocket. So get your fabric piece for your stump, fold it in half long ways with the pretty side of the fabric together. Sew across the top and one of the sides, leaving one side open using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Clip both of your corners right up to the stitches and flip this right side out. Again, I like to use my chopstick to go in and open up all of my seams in my corners so they lay nice and flat. Bring this to your iron and smoothen out any wrinkles, and then you're going to go to the open end and turn it inwards about 1/4 of an inch, and then press that flat with your iron as well. Now you can take this over to your sewing machine and top stitch along both of the sides using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You are only going to do it right now if you are not planning to add any kind of decorative ribbon or trim. Now fold this in half and press a crease across the bottom so that way when you open it up, you will have a nice long folded crease. We're going to use this as a sewing guide in a little bit. Now let's put that to the side and work on making the first layer of our tree. The first layer holds 2 pockets, so go ahead and get 2 of your quilt rectangle fabric pieces. Lay them right on top of each other with the pretty sides of the fabric kissing and lining up the right sides of your fabric. Sew down the side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Open that seam up and press it flat with your iron if you need to. Now you're going to fold this in half by bringing the top and the bottom pieces of this fabric together with the pretty side of the fabric on the inside. Make sure you line up that middle seam so that everything lays nice and evenly. And then you are going to sew all the way across the top and one of the sides using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and cut 2 of your corners that you have already sewn to reduce the bulk when you flip this here in a minute. And go ahead and flip it right side out. Use a chopstick or whatever you have on hand to poke out all of your corners and your seams. And then you're going to go and iron it flat and then press in your open end 1/4 of an inch and press that flat or pin it in place. And then you're going to sew across both sides of this pocket piece using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you're going to add ribbon or trim to the sides, you can hold off on sewing the sides at this time. Here is mine with the side sewn right close to the edge using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Let's put that to the side and make this second layer of pockets on our tree. Get 3 of your pocket rectangle fabric pieces, lay them out how you want them to appear on your advent, and then starting with the one on the far right, flip it so that it's right sides together with the one in the middle and sew all the way down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press this seam open and then get your remaining fabric piece and lay it with the right side down on top of that left side of the fabric. Go ahead and sew it using a 1/4 inch seam allowance right down the left side. Now you're going to open this up and you will have 3 different fabrics pieced together. Just like you did before, iron your seams open if you need to, and then you're going to fold this in half, bringing the top and the bottom pieces together with the pretty side of the fabric on the inside. Make sure that your seams are lined up and you're going to sew all the way across the top and one of the sides, just like you did before. Once you've done that, you are going to clip both of your sewn corners right up to the stitches, but not cutting through them, and flip this right side out. Open up all of your seams and poke out all of your corners with the chopstick or whatever you're using, and then you're going to press this flat. And then just like you've done before, you're going to fold in the open edge 1/4 of an inch and press it flat with your iron. Go ahead and top stitch across the left and right sides using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you are going to add ribbon or trim, you can wait to do that part. Now let's make the last layer of our quilted pockets for our advent. It holds 4 pockets. It is the bottom widest layer of the tree, right above the stump, and you are going to need 4 pieces of your rectangular pocket fabric pieces. Lay them out how you want them to appear on your advent, and then you're going to sew starting at the right side, just how you did before. Open up your seams, and then place the fabric on the left side against the left edges, sew using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance down that side. Open it up, and then you're going to place the last piece of fabric with the right sides together on the left side and sew down the left side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just like you did before on the previous tree layers, go ahead and iron this flat to open out all of your seams. And then you're going to fold this together at the top and the bottom, making sure that your seams are all lined up, and sew across the side and the top. Follow the same steps as you did before to finish this layer and put it right side out. Now you're done making all the layers of your Advent tree. This is what it looks like when you're all finished and how these layers look. You made your star, the trunk of your tree, and you also made the 3 tree layers of your quilted pockets. If you want to add ribbon or trim to any part of your tree pockets, you would do that now. I will briefly show you how I do that, and if you don't want to do this, you can skip this step. That's why I told you that if you did want to put ribbon or trim around anything, you don't have to sew the sides closed quite yet, because when you top stitch the ribbon in place, it's going to close those sides for you anyways. So with your quilt pockets facing down, wrap your ribbon around the sides and overlap it onto the back just a little bit and pin or clip it in place. I like to overlap the ribbon just a little on the sides, and then we're gonna top stitch close to the inner sides of your ribbon on top of your quilt pockets. And you're gonna do this on both sides. Here's mine put into place, and you can also add it across the top like here, and you're just gonna top stitch it right in place the same way. You can also do it down the seams of your pockets. Now we're ready to place our pockets onto the front large piece of fabric that you're going to use for the front of your Advent calendar. You're going to get that big large piece of fabric and fold it in half right where you see my black line here. Make a crease and then open it back up. Now once it's opened back up, you're going to fold all of your pocket pieces, your star, your pocket, quilted pieces, and your trunk. Fold it in half to create a crease, and then align it with the folded crease on your big main piece of fabric, right down the middle. Make sure there's 1 inch at least of space in between each of your layered pieces of your pockets. You can see here all the way around the border of my top fabric piece. I also added some rickrack trim. I just pinned it in place and top stitched it in place. That is optional. Once you have all of your pocket pieces placed on top of your big main front piece of fabric, you're going to go ahead and top stitch them in place. Starting with the star, make sure it's pinned in place, and you're going to sew a top stitch all the way around the star except for across the top. You can see here at the left picture that I've put some black dashes around the area that you should be sewing. Around each of your pocket quilted pieces as well as your trunk, you're going to sew starting down the left side all the way across the bottom and then back up across the right side. Do not sew across the top. Now you're ready to top stitch in the ditch along the seams of your pocket layers. This is going to create the individual pockets. So go ahead and where you see my dashed lines on each of the 3 layers of your tree pockets, go ahead and sew starting at the top all the way to the bottom edge of each one of your pocket layers. When you get to the trunk of the tree, you have a crease that you folded down the middle of that. Use that as your sewing guide to start at the top of that pocket and sew all the way down to the middle bottom of that pocket so that your trunk is actually 2 Advent pockets. You have a couple different options on how you want to make your hanging loops. I used a piece of coordinating white fabric. It's the same fabric I'm using on the back side of my Advent calendar once it's all finished. And you're just going to fold those in half and sew a line across the bottom of these where the raw edges are just to hold it in place. Then you're going to place them 3 inches from the left and 3 inches from the right with the loop side facing down. That is very important. Then you're going to sew these 2 pieces of hanging loops in place using about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to hold it in place there. And you can also use ribbon for this. That would make it a lot quicker and easier. You're just going to cut 2 pieces of ribbon the length of the hanging loops and then attach them just like I did here with my fabric. Again, the cutting dimensions and pattern pieces are included. They are in the link below in the description box, and you can print them at home to start this project. If you want to, you can add a piece of batting or fusible fleece to the wrong side of the back piece of your fabric. This is not necessary, but it will add a little bit of padding and thickness to your advent calendar. If you decide not to do this, let's go ahead and attach the back of the fabric for your advent calendar to the front by placing the fabrics right sides together. That's the pretty sides of the fabric facing each other, and then you're going to pin or clip all the way around your advent calendar. Now you're going to sew all the way around the entire advent calendar, leaving about a 4-inch gap opening at the bottom so that we can flip this right side out. Once you have that all sewn using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, go to that 4-inch opening and flip this advent calendar right side out. Put your hand inside of it and smoothen out all of the seams. I also like to use a chopstick to poke out all of my corners carefully. And here, the picture to the right, you will see what it looks like once you have it all flipped to the right side. Now we want to go ahead and close that 4-inch opening that we have down there at the bottom. Go ahead and push your fabric inwards about 3/8 of an inch so that it's flush with the rest of the fabric. Then you're going to press this with your iron so it stays in place, or you can pin or clip it. The last thing that we have to do after that is, starting at that opening, you're going to top stitch around the entire advent calendar using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you are completely done. You can hang these on a wall, you can hang it on a door, you can hang it up for Christmas decorations. If you don't want them to be pocketed for your advent calendar, you can sew around each of those pieces so that they're not pockets, and instead it's a Christmas tree, door decor item. Use it however you want to and change this pattern out however you would like. These are great for Christmas decorations, and they are really a genuinely great gift to give because it's handmade with love. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have fun sewing along with me. Please, please, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel to see all of our easy sewing patterns as they're released. Visit AlohaSewingCompany.com, or the link is down below in the description box on YouTube to see all of our super easy sewing patterns that you can print at home so you can start to sew faster. We make sewing patterns for literally everything, from baby items, kids' clothes, decorations, holiday stuff and gifts, bags and more. And before you go, mahalo.